What's up YouTube, this is Devi aka Deviant Dreamers, and I'm back with yet another video to help you master the art of Gwent in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Our previous video focused on breaking down the extreme basics of this captivating card game, and it hopefully helped you to understand enough to start building your confidence and challenging early opponents in your adventures, such as the Bloody Baron of Crow's Perch, Humble Hattie of Midcopse, and, well, this guy in Vizima. My goal for this video today is to teach you my top 5 tips to defeating any Gwent opponent in The Witcher 3. With these tried and tested foolproof methods, you'll earn the title of Ultimate Gwent Master and, hopefully, credit me in your acceptance speeches. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to our channel if you enjoy this content.
Always ready for a round.
And now for the first and most important tip that I can give anyone when playing Gwent in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt: accumulate and use as many spy cards as possible. Regardless of the faction that you are playing, you will be able to gather some spy cards. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with how spy cards work, when you play them, they will give your opponent a point value boost. Although your opponent does get this initial point value boost, playing spy cards helps you in the long run because you do get that card advantage. With every spy card that you play, you get to draw an additional 2 cards. And of course, this can give you a massive point advantage later in the game. This is part of the reason why spy cards are so powerful. Because you usually are not drawing any additional cards moving into a new round, unless you are playing with the Northern Realms faction, playing these spy cards gives you the opportunity to look into your deck more and utilize all of the resources that you have. Of course, there's also a little bit of a caveat to this. If you are ever able to accumulate and play with spy cards that have a lower point value, that benefits you even more. That way your opponent is not gaining too much of a significant point value advantage compared to you, and you are still reaping the benefits of the spy card by gaining that card advantage. My second tip for any deck that you play with or make in Gwent is to make sure that you have as much diversity in your deck as possible. Although it may seem like a benefit to play with a handful of hero cards that are resilient on the battlefield, they don't get impacted by weather or anything like that, it's actually more beneficial to have a diversity of cards in your deck, because those hero cards are also unaffected by things such as the Commander's Horn that will be able to provide an extra boost whenever you might need it to compete with your opponent. So what I would suggest is a form of balance whenever you're crafting a deck. Regardless of your faction, ensure that you have some units that are close combat, that are range, and that are siege. Ensure that you have some sort of control over the weather. You might not include cards like Biting Frost or Impenetrable Fog. You might take this as a leader ability instead. When I play with the Northern Realms faction, personally, I tend to use the full test card that clears all weather. That way I'm not wasting a special card in my deck, and I still have that ability to clear the weather for my units in case of a rainy day. I also ensure that I always have some form of a decoy card available so that I can retract a card that I've previously played, and this might come in handy in several different scenarios. For example, if you have a medic card which allows you to play a card from your discard pile over again, you might want to replay that medic card at a later point in the game. Additionally, if your opponent is also playing with a wide variety of spy cards, you can steal one of their spy cards with a decoy and play that so that you get the card advantage again later on. And whether again you want to choose something that is reflected in your leader ability or directly through a card, I do recommend some form of a point doubling maneuver. So whether you're playing Commander's Horn, or Dandelion, Dragbundu, or a full test that doubles all the strength of your siege units, I do think that these types of cards are good to have in your back pocket so that you can kind of pull out a quick victory at the last second, depending on how your opponent is playing against you. Lastly, I do recommend some type of a Scorch card as well. So a lot of the cards that we've talked about, such as spy cards, resurrection cards, they help to build and strengthen your own forces. It's a very defensive playstyle, essentially. And to balance that out, Scorch cards are able to bring in some sort of offense or attack. This is the only form of active attack that you will get in Gwent in the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Scorch cards do have to be used with a lot of caution because it can end up harming you as well if you're not looking at the numbers correctly. So they do kill off the strongest or most powerful units on the battlefield as a whole. So if you do use them correctly, you can wipe out several of your enemy's opponents at one time. Now you can play with normal Scorch cards, just basically like weather cards. They are specials that you can use. But also you can play with cards that have a Scorch-related ability, such as Villain Trettenmirth, who will scorch the highest units in your enemy's close combat row, so long as your enemy's cards add up to an attack power of 10 or greater. Now for my third piece of advice, I kind of mentioned this in passing earlier in tip number 2, which is to make sure that you are choosing a leader ability that best suits your playstyle or your strategy. So for example, if I were to pick the full test card that allows me to clear the weather, I'm going to take all of the clear weather cards out of my deck. Additionally, if I choose the full test that gives me the ability to double my siege unit strength, I might not include a Commander's Horn, or I might include one less Commander's Horn than I usually play with. Now, a lot of the leader cards, especially when you first get started with the game, tend to be cards that affect the weather. For example, you have a full test card that will play an impenetrable fog, you have an Emir card that will play a torrential rain from your deck as well, so these are good things to keep in mind when you are selecting a leader card. Additionally, there are leader cards, versions of Emir, Eridan, and Francesca, that allow you to draw an additional card or draw from your opponent's graveyard, so perhaps in these particular scenarios or situations, you may not want to use as many spy cards as normal.
You play much Gwent? Up for a quick match, maybe?
Whether you're in it to win it and you're so incredibly passionate about playing the game of Gwent, or you're just trying to get all the Steam achievements possible that you can and beat this game 100%, the biggest tip I can offer you is to play everyone that you meet. Playing everyone that you meet will give you the opportunity to not only make some money and practice your skills in Gwent, but also to earn some cards as well. Now, not every person that you play in Gwent will be able to give you a card when you win, but most of them do. Even the Nilfgaardian nobleman in Vizima, when you first start the game, will actually give you a rare full test leader card that you cannot get from anyone else unless you play and defeat him. Now, this is great news not only for those of us who want to complete that collect 'em all quest and gain all of the cards possible in this universe, but it's also a lot easier to defeat your opponents when you have more resources to draw from. So like I said, I do recommend playing everyone you stumble across, even these lowly merchants, so that you not only gain the experience, but you might gain access to more cards, and you might be able to craft decks that allow you to win in a much less stressful way than you might anticipate. And lastly, my final tip for you, and this comes from my personal playstyle, is to play Gwent reactively. Always make sure that you're keeping some of your hard-hitting cards or your hard-hitting combos for the end of the game. Sometimes it is in fact okay to lose in the first round purposefully if you can set up a strong enough round 2 and 3 to secure the win. What I tend to do is I tend to play some of my quote-unquote weaker cards in the very beginning of the game to kind of tease out if the opponent has a lot of weather cards that they're going to use, a lot of spy cards, muster cards, scorch cards. That way I can save some of my stronger cards for the very end of the match and make sure that I secure that win. Now, the more that you play Gwent, you are going to pick up this intuitive knowledge and ability. You'll be able to read into what strategies your opponent might be employing, as well as how to best counter those strategies. So again, just make sure that you are playing responsively. You're not focused just on your side of the board, you're looking at the whole picture. So those are my top 5 tips for playing Gwent in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. And if you use them strategically, I guarantee that there will be no opponent that you face who will be able to take you down. So happy Gwenting, friends, best of luck, and again, please do keep me in mind for your acceptance speeches in the future. I hope to see you back here soon for some more Gwent or Witcher 3 Wild Hunt content. Until then, take care!